initiative within the Wadhwani Foundation. As most of you know, at the foundation, we are keenly looking at creating more jobs. That's our North Star, job creation. And the Venture Fast Track, that is me and my team, really focus on the supporting of startups who we feel in the future are going to become job creators. So we do have every fortnight a series of masterclasses where we get individuals to talk about different aspects of building a business from an entire startup lens. This week we've got Kaustav Majumdar with us. Now Kaustav has been working, of course, with startups, and especially with a group called ILS Network in T5, where the startups are from the nanotech, virtual reality, education, healthcare, and hospitality sector. And he also has social impact interests, which includes his work with the Data Science Foundation. He's today going to be spending time on the entire market segmentation and really looking at your markets from a very startup lens. I think when we discuss as startups, when we're all working with you, there's always a conversation on which markets to go after, what should be our priority, which can then very quickly plug into the entire making your revenues rise, and then of course towards sustainability. So I think segmentation becomes very important from the prioritization perspective, and today Kaustav's really going to talk about that. You can keep your videos on if it permits from your bandwidth perspective. And Kaustav, how would you like to do this? Questions at the end, interactive as we go? What would you like?
They should stop me whenever they want to and ask questions.
All right, so interactive on the go. All right, great. Over to you, Kaustav.
Thank you. I have a request. At my age, if I'm found talking to myself, people will get very worried. My request to all of you thereby would be to please keep your videos on, just so that folks peeping from the windows don't start thinking that I've gone senile. There is a strong belief that I'm losing my mind, but let it not be today. Really request you guys to please keep your videos on, because otherwise it gets very difficult, besides being monotonous. Thank you. Some of you I'm hoping would be kind. Thank you, Anupama. Appreciate it. The others, please keep the videos on. Thank you, Karyana. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Sagar. Somebody's joined in from Johannesburg. Okay, cool. I mean, if it's inconvenient, if you cannot, I completely understand. But if you can, please go ahead. No problems, Hendrik. It's fine. Thank you for letting me know. Others, if you can, Kiresh, Astha, Pavitra, Rajkumar, Sujit, Manoj, Rakesh, Pratap, Gurpreet, Preeti, and don't worry if there's a family member walking behind you or something like that. I think we are all used to this for the last 2 years. This is okay now. This is fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. You may see one of my children walk behind me all of a sudden. What used to be annoying, Meher, earlier was one of them would stop and wave. That was that was a bit of a problem.
But so, I think it would give a humorous respite to our serious meetings, right?
Yes, true.
And some young people waving at you from the back.
Yeah, it's quite possible. It's quite possible. One of my children, my daughter, she's the naughty one. The son's, it's a big boy now. He's got more sense. The daughter's got her own sense. She stopped and says, "What are you doing?" She says, "I wanted to check whether folks you're talking to have fallen asleep or not."
Makes sense.
Very kind of her. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Isha, Anil, Rakesh, Sujit, Savitri, Sagar. If you don't switch your videos on, one day karma will come and bite you guys, and you're going to speak and I'm going to be on the other side. I will switch it on and then switch it off just to sort of get back at you.
Pardon me, this is Supriya here from Sister. I'm outside with low bandwidth, so I won't be able to.
No worries, Supriya. I'm just pulling your leg. It's fine. I completely understand. Thank you. Cool. That's a number of faces on. Thank you so much. It's okay. I have proof that I'm not talking to myself.
I think everyone from my team can put their videos on also.
This guy's not going to begin till there are more videos on.
So I'm just trying to, the low-hanging fruit, the ones who I can convince.
Cool. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm not going to talk about myself. Thank you, Meher, for a very, very generous introduction. That's far more than enough. Should there be sufficient merit in extending this relationship beyond these 1.5 hours, please look me up on LinkedIn. And I'll be happy to hook up with you guys and get into a call and speak to you about what you're doing. This session is not about me, this session is about you. And this session is about, maybe to a certain degree, some of the mistakes that I might have made in my life. Well, I'm not going to talk about myself, but I am going to talk about why I think I, along with a million more people, are capable about talking about markets and segmentation. So are you, for that matter. Besides the fact that I teach in boring colleges, I teach boring subjects, forget about all of that. I have been an entrepreneur since I was in class 7. I have a few successes, and but you know, this country, this world is obsessed with fluke successes. I think it's the abnormal failures which is what teaches us. I have had my own share of astronomical failures. But over the years, what I found out amongst my failures and the failures that I've been associated with, I'm also a consultant. I work with a number of funded startups, some of which I can claim that have successfully helped them go out of business. I have seen people over a period of the last, say, 25 odd years, repeat mistakes. There is a pattern in some of the mistakes that we seem to make. And much of what I do in my research, in my teaching, in my workshops, is try and identify the mistakes that we seem to make. There is no one magic mantra to building a startup. Nobody knows that. One of the finest business brains the country has ever produced, the world has ever produced, Ratan Tata, did not go so right with his nano project. If he can make mistakes, I think we can be pardoned as well. So the bottom line is that nobody knows how to build a startup for sure, 10 times. Then what is it that we can do to perhaps avoid some of the more regular customary mistakes? That's all that we can do, and do that diligently and hope for the best. I have a session where I have a number of slides, but most of my slides, there are hardly anything written in them. So they're like images, and I'm going to go very rapidly through them. You should stop me whenever you want to. If you have something to contribute, if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, if you feel something would benefit others, please go ahead, chirp in, absolutely not a problem. Keep the chat window busy. I will be asking you sort of, your opinions once in a while. And I hope all of you will be super engaged. There are still a number of people I'm requesting, whenever time permits, in the course of the next hour and a half or so, please switch on your video if possible, or at least stay active on the chat window. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. There's going to be a number of videos, 2-3 videos. Please give me a thumbs up if you can see and hear them.
Sure.
So besides my work with startups and I teach entrepreneurship, if that can at all be taught, I'm not so sure. But the lie seems to perpetuate if it's a lie, and colleges keep calling me back, and Wadhwani Foundation keeps calling me back. So the lie perpetuates, and I keep pretending to be somebody who knows how to do entrepreneurship. But within the realm of entrepreneurship and marketing, area of interest for me, by no means an area of expertise for me, but an area of interest for me, is the human mind and human behavior. And I believe a substantial part of the mystery's solution lies in our understanding of this ever-changing paradigm, ever-changing. The ultimate truth is that the human mind is almost impossible to read. But there are patterns that one gets. And that's all that I spend my time with. This is one of them. A lot of my work is borrowed from great researchers. I will be more than happy to share some of my reference points. I will be quoting a number of books and a number of research over the last 20 odd years or 20 or 30 years. Those of you who have interest in this, please write to me and share every little bit that I have used over here. This is going to be a video. Some of you might have seen this. Please be a sport. Don't ruin it for the others. Those who haven't seen it, please pay absolute attention. There's going to be a video where a group of people are going to be engaged in a sporting activity. You will be given an instruction, and I would request you to follow the instruction and do as you're told in the video. Cool. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear and see.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? Go!
How many passes did the team in white make? Anybody? Did anybody count? There was a question. I said you need to follow what the instruction is going to be like.
Is it around 10?
Okay. Any other guesses? Okay, doesn't matter. Did anybody see anything else over here? Okay, cool.
The answer is 13. But did you see the moon-walking bear? Go!
Right. Much of what we're going to discuss stems from this video, and I hope it will make a little more sense. You guys are all entrepreneurs. Some are existing entrepreneurs, some are entrepreneurs in the making. You're already doing something which is difficult and more often than not doomed to fail. And then the mind plays tricks depending on what state of mind you're in. If you're in a happy state of mind, you will find happiness, and at times that can be misleading. If you're in an unhappy state of mind, you will find everything going wrong around you, and that can also be misleading. Now, if you're not looking for something, you're not going to most likely find that. If you're not looking for a few answers, you're not going to find those answers just in life, in philosophy, exactly the same way in the world of business. If you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to be finding answers. Much of what I do with startups, as well as some larger companies, is asking or help ask the right questions. And I hope by the end of my time with you today, I will be able to help you to realize what kind of questions that you need to ask of your business. And only you can do that properly, nobody else. Okay, we're gonna move ahead. So what is this all about? I mean, who are we all? I mean, what is it that that is common to all of us? If you can see a picture, which is a psychedelic kind of a picture, it's out of focus deliberately. Who are we, guys? Any thoughts? Who are we? What binds all of us? Quickly, come on, guys. There's no, I mean, nobody's going to. Sorry, Anupama, go for it. Sorry, pardon me?
Our needs, basically.
So we have
The
needs,
question was
okay?
what binds us together. So
What that binds us together, fair enough. I think
our needs and wants.
our needs and wants. So, which is true in many ways. I don't know whether it binds us together or not, but we all have needs. We we all have needs. We all have wants. Now, let me extend that question. I'm happy with that.
Interdependence. Maybe
there is an interdependence. There could be an interdependence, but I'm going to park that for a second. I'm going to stay with needs and wants. We needs and wants at various stages in our lives, right? Actually, we have needs and wants all through our lives. There is, I mean, unless you've been able to achieve a state of, I don't know, spiritual superstardom, you possibly will have needs and wants literally every second of your life. Now, there is also a need and want amongst us, this brethren, this august company of about 40 people. We have a need, we have a want. We wish to build something. We wish to put up a business together. We have a product or a service. We want to build something. We want to create something. That's a need, right? Isn't that a need?
Yes, it is.
Now, this is all about building something. In my mind, a startup is a creation in progress. Now, but there's a problem, right? The problem, probabilistically speaking, there is one almost truth about startup. Probabilistically speaking, it's not necessarily an absolute truth, but probabilistically speaking, it's almost a truth. If you look at it on a macro level, if there are a million startups across the world, probabilistically speaking, there is one truth. And that truth is that startups almost always die. Agreed? I mean, if you look at various literature that may be available within our country and abroad, it's actually not known how many startups die. NASSCOM projects something, whatever. And we are myopic, right? We see a Zomato or a Nykaa and we start thinking the entire startup ecosystem is just gung-ho. It is tremendous as compared to, say, what it was when I was in my 20s. I come from a middle-class Bengali family. Nobody becomes an entrepreneur from a middle-class Bengali family. I mean, the general belief amongst my relatives when I came back to India in 1998, 99, after I went when I was a teenager, was that my visa expired or I lost my job or I got kicked out of the country that I was living in. General belief is that ye kuch karod zarur kiya hoga, nahi to wapas kyun aaya hai. And then I said, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I had an entrepreneurial background even before that, but that was immaterial, right? That was hobby, part-time kaam. Ye sach mein karne wala hai, kyun kar raha hai? That narrative seems to have shifted. Today, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is romanticized. People do not necessarily look down upon that. In fact, it's a cool thing to do. I mean, it's conversation starter. What do you do? I'm building a business. So at least that narrative has shifted. But the fact of the matter is a large number of them, a disproportionate number of them, they die, right? They die at various stages. Some die before even they begin. Some die in the first year. Some die in the, I don't know, a span of about a year or 2 or 3 years. And then eventually a large number of them die in the first 3 or 4 years. And a huge number of them don't die. They continue to exist, but it's almost like death. I mean, I have this conversation with a number of founders who tell me, I don't know why I started this. At the end of the day, I'm not seeing all the commercial success that I thought I will get. I'm not seeing the emotional stability that I thought I will get. Why am I doing this at the end of the day? It's a really lonely journey. I'm not trying to discourage you. Meher will get very upset with me. Here I am trying to encourage a whole bunch of young at heart entrepreneurs, and I'm supposed to say life's going to be beautiful, but life's not going to be beautiful. I mean, life's going to be hard. So it's important that we quickly understand what happens. Well, I'm not sure how authentic these research are. It's all borrowed from the internet. I keep seeing these things and I see many of these research. I don't know which one's correct. But all of them seem to be very accurate, bona fide reasons. And it could be upper niche, it could be culturally different. America में जो होता है, Germany में शायद नहीं होता है, Germany में जो होता है, India में शायद नहीं होता है. And a lot of people tell me that there was no market need, I ran out of money, product fitment गलत हो गया था, team and investors के बीच में गड़बड़ हो गया, investor ही नहीं मिला, legal challenges, etc., etc. Burnout could be actually a lot more. I failed to pivot. मेरी business मैंने अपना business को web 2.0 को दिमाग में रख के बनाया था, and then 5G came, web 3.0 got ushered in. The world of technology changed, and I could not pivot. Location is a problem. Pricing was never correct, etc., etc. And it goes on and on and on. I keep hearing thousands and thousands of reasons why startups die. I don't know. Quick question over here. Any of you over here are survivors from a past startup death? जिन्होंने startup पहले शुरू किया था and it did not do well. Any? Meher. Oh, okay. And what was your startup before, Meher?
It was an edtech startup which did experiential learning for the K-12 segment.
Fantastic. Experiential learning. You and I should be talking. I have a lot of interest in that. Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult market to be in. Experiential learning technically should be the way to learn. But we are so hardwired and hard-coded in the way we all know we should not learn, but we don't want to change. And then you form billion-dollar companies overnight, actually perpetuating everything that should be changed.
Yeah.
The whole coaching business, the whole evaluation business, we all know it should be changed. We want to change it, and then when somebody tries to change it, no. Okay, Krishanu, yes, please.
Yeah, hi, Kaustav. Good afternoon.
Hi. Good afternoon.
So I'm with the foundation as well. So I had 2 successful startups of mine and 1 failure.
Okay.
Failure, so think of it like what Geo is right now. So just before Geo came in, so I understood a market in Goa where internet connectivity is bad. Everyone's experienced that. So we set up with Railtel, which is one of the fastest internet providers in the world, if you check their speed, and things just didn't fall in place with the stakeholders. I had investors from Dubai, and not just that invested into the idea. So I set up the infrastructure, set up the office, I set up we had good customer base, but the lack of interest that came in from my partners is something because of which I had to pull out my stake and liquidate it. So that was a learning I had taken at that point.
Two huge points that I picked up from there. One is that I think you spot on a substantial number of businesses. They die because they don't have the right team right at the top, which is the founder base. It's very difficult. I don't want to point fingers, but then generally speaking, I for one like to invest in businesses which have multiple founders. But then I am also equally concerned about the equation that exists between the founders. And many businesses struggle because the founders just don't click. At times they click at the beginning, and then when the going gets tough, they don't click. At times when the going is tough, they click. When the going gets easy, they don't click. So it's very difficult for people to sort of work together. And it's a huge point that you raise. And the second point that I picked up, Krishanu, from you is that you got into a business and you almost ended up competing with a certain Mr. Ambani from Mumbai. You're a very bold man. Who knows? You could have sold your business for $1 billion or something like that.
And that is what my vision was, to sell it, because it was Vimax technology.
Right.
And I had World Health Organization reports that the radiation levels, it's nothing. There was a lot of stiff resistance from the locals in Goa about electric cars. But we had set up our infrastructure, everything. And the vision was that at that time, Geo wasn't a player. They were just coming into the market. And I was like, we can sell this.
Sure.
But the investors did not see that vision of mine.
So if I have to if I have to zero down on 2 key areas where I think startups fail, one would certainly be the team, and the team includes founders. And the second is what I'm going to come to right at the end of this curve. This curve is well known to people who are from the ecosystem. I'm sure my colleagues from the foundation would have heard of this curve. Some of you would have also seen this curve. This curve is not necessarily so true with modern day businesses. But if you can look at it, if you can look at it from a conceptual point of view, this is a product curve. We can look at it as a service curve. We can look at it as a business, as a company's curve, a department's curve. I mean, an idea whose time has come, it's now going to be built into a business, would possibly go through a maturity curve like this. It starts with a concept and it goes through a certain kind of, it goes through a certain kind of movement, certain kind of momentum. It gathers over a period of time, and then it grows, and there is an inflection point at some point in time. It starts reaping benefits, and then it tapers down at some stage. A gentleman that I've had the opportunity of spending some wonderful hours when I was with SVJMR is a gentleman called Mr. Gopalakrishnan. He used to be the head of Tata Sons. He was an advisor at SVJMR. I was like a guest faculty over there. I still am. And I have spent a few hours, and we would end up talking about, he used to say, Kaustav, you are a startup guy. I am a grown-up guy, which is true because he was Tata Sons. And we would look at this curve, and you would see it's the same for large businesses as it is for small businesses. And we would look at this curve and how things can go right, where things can go wrong. One of the things that I learned from him and I understood from him, which, I mean, I'd seen it before, but I think he helped me see it clearer, was startups never make money when they're innovating. Startups almost always make money when the innovation is stable, when the innovation starts yielding through processes. And that's that growth to maturity phase. But today, what we're talking about is slightly different. We're talking about this niche wala part, concept, introduction, growth wala part. We're talking about this area where the startups almost always die, literally every minute. The idea to prototype, to testing, to product, to market traction, to growth. And it could be iterative in nature. It may not follow a linear, or it need not follow a sort of a time linear phase. It will possibly go back and forth. And if you look at those lines coming out, that's my poor attempt of showing that those are possible areas where those startups may die. And why is it that startups are dying? Because I feel startups mostly die because if you look at all those points, no market need, run out of cash, maybe barring not the right team, outcompeted, poor product, poor marketing, ignore customers, lose focus, disharmony, lack passion, bad location, almost all of them, it's linked to customers. You see, customers drives businesses. Customer does the business. We feel that we do the business. Successful companies like Apple and Amazon or Google, customers perpetuate the business. We just have to make sure that the customers are successful in running the business on our behalf. The Apple phone owner does the Apple selling for Apple. If you remember Apple's advertisements, they almost never speak of features. They speak of what the phone does and the joy that people derive out of what the phone does. And that's all that they have to do. Of course, they make great products. And if they've been able to enter our heads, then we are going to talk to our contacts and we're going to say, oh my God, look at this picture. Wow, how did you get this? Oh, it's my new lens in my Apple phone. That's it. They keep doing it. The customers do the business. Successful businesses are businesses where the customers are doing the business and not us. In fact, I believe customer is the business. And I borrow this heavily from a gentleman called Bill Ollett. Bill is the director of MIT's entrepreneurship and innovation department. He's a phenomenal writer. He's written a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It's a bit of an oxymoron, entrepreneurs and discipline, which I think is extremely necessary. And he says the single most important part of a business, the single most important aspect of a business is a paying customer. Do you have somebody who's willing to pay money for what you are doing? Customer is the business. With that, I'm going to carry on with the most important line, I think, in this entire session: your product Replace that with your service if it's a service-based business, if it's a productized service, if it's this, a product as a service or service as a product or whatever it is. Your product is not your business. 8 out of 10 businesses that I look at, if I'm a judge in this Sunday, I was evaluating a group of startups for another college that I teach in called MICA. My primary feedback to a large number of the startups where they forgot, they made tons of assumptions, and the most dangerous assumptions that you can make is that my customer will buy. And they forgot to check, gauge, push their minds and their research why the customer would buy. The product is not the business. And I'm going to leave this question over here, and I'm going to invite some thoughts. Any thoughts about what do I mean by your product is not your business? Do you guys have a tremendous product? Do you feel that it can sell by itself? Is there a product in this planet which can sell by itself? Is your product your business? Your product is not your business. What do I mean by this? I want some thoughts from you, please.
So Kaustav, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Neera, yes, please.
Yeah, Neera, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, sorry, somebody else.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Neera.
So your product is not your business. What I understand from this is basically all the founders and startup owners, they are in the business of solving problems, providing solution for the problems that exist in the market. So the focus of a business owner should never be on the solution, but always be on the problem. So we are in the business of providing a solution, not in the business of the product or the service that we sell.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like that. I like that line of thinking. I'm not saying I agree 100%, but I think I agree mostly with that. You're right. If you see, there's a problem. What happens is we look at a problem and we feel that we have found a solution, and then our view changes from the problem to the solution that we have built. And then we want to justify that solution at any cost. That seems to be the story of a large number of products. And thereby, Neera, and from that aspect, I think I agree with you. There is this expression, not expression. There's this. I'm sure all of you would have heard of it. All of you would have heard of biases, for example. And there are many types of biases. There's a very dangerous type of bias called confirmation bias. Can somebody tell me what's a confirmation bias? And a lot of my conversation is based on confirmation bias. A lot of my conversation today is based on confirmation bias.
We look for data to validate what we believe is true. And we
Perfect.
selectively look for data.
I'm sorry, I did not see who spoke over there.
Oh, Basant here.
Hi, Basant. Hi, Basant. Yes, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I will come back to you. Yes, Karyana, please go for it.
Yeah, it means that we usually because our mind is want to validate, and usually that we are being biased because we want to prove that our assumption is true.
Yeah. I think both of you are saying the same thing, and both of you are correct. Unless you're suffering from some kind of a mental illness, who wants to be wrong? We all want to be right, and we have to remember, being an entrepreneur is not easy. We know we are more destined to lose than to win. And we are looking at straws. We are looking at any which way we can survive. And then, you get caught up in that. You say, oh, maine aapko bola tha, right? And you think of all the conversations. In fact, it's nothing to do with business. It's actually basic human behavior, right? And it's just human, the way we are. And we talk to each other. We discuss certain things. And then we are continuously trying to tell to the world, definitely, to ourselves primarily, oh, that I'm correct. And that is necessary, because if you don't do that, and if you feel that you do not trust yourself, your judgments, your beliefs, the opposite is equally dangerous. You suffer from tremendous lack of confidence. Now, striking that balance, I guess, is the job. I don't know how to strike that balance. But if you feel you have built something which is going to be good for people, it is but natural that you have to encourage yourself. And he says, koi baat nahi beta, jao, koshish karo. ये किस जगह पे, at what stage this conviction becomes zid and then zid becomes stupidity is something not many founders know how to deal with it. Not that I'm saying I know. At any given point in time, I invest in various different small startups. I also actually build a few startups of, with experiments. Some of them don't work. Of course, my hit ratio might have changed over the last 15, 20, 30 years. But at what stage do I say, hey, I am Kaustav, I am 50 years old, or I have been doing this for a long time, I know my shit, I can deal with this. And at what stage that confidence is becoming overconfidence. So your product is not your business, because the business is not the product. The business is the solution wrapped into something, right? And then it needs to be delivered to the client. And then the client needs to be able to use it. And the client needs to feel, oh my God, this solved something for me. Oh my God, this was great for me. And then the client needs to pay you. Then the client needs to tell 10 more people. तब जाके वो business होगा. अभी तक आप you're not able to replicate it. अभी तक ये this is not really, it's actually not even a business, it's actually one time. अब इसको आप जब replicate कर पाओगे again and again, it becomes a business model. और उसको बहुत बार कर पाओगे तब जाके पैसा बनेगा. तब जाके वो sustainable बनेगा. तब जाके you have been able to do something. And that's why it's so difficult. Of course, if you don't ask the right questions to begin with, you will not know what the problem is to begin with. Then you won't be able to build any solution. But finding the solution to finding the problem and getting a solution is not business. Shrink wrapping that, going back to the customer again and again, checking it, is the business. Okay. For me, thereby, it's all in the mind. Sorry, I should have changed the date. Okay. Why isn't it moving forward? Okay, I'm stuck over here. Oh, right. Question. Who is all this for? Customers. Right. All of this is for customers. So thereby, the narrative is not about you. A large number of startups, at some point in time, the narrative becomes about the founder, or the narrative is the product. This is something I hear all the time. This is something I see all the time. Oh, I have done this. I have built this. Look at this. Unless you are building something which is deeply innovative, unless you are coming out with a, I don't know, like a COVID vaccine, unless you're coming out with we still don't have really a COVID cure. Let's assume that you build a COVID cure. Let's assume Mr. Parmar over here and Mr. Pathak over here, along with Gaurav Chaudhary, the three of them get together and they found a COVID cure, right? Even then it needs to go and solve it, you need to repeat it, you need to do all of those things, right? But the narrative at the end of the day, for example, COVID just vanishes from the face of the earth, then Mr. Palmer might have wasted his time. Bottom line is, jinka problem aap solve kar rahe ho, the narrative is always about that. And I want us to please remember this, because everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be that. It's not about you, it's about the customer. Okay? I don't know what's happening with mine. Has my screen changed, Meher? I'm sorry. Okay. There. What do your customer not have? Can you tell me before I continue? What does your customer not have?
Your vision.
Yes, perhaps. Assume that you've been able to explain the vision. Assume that you're in a business that the customer knows that who you are. Then what it would be. Vision's a good answer, but there's a particular word that I'm seeking. What does the customer not have for you? What does the customer not have? And without which you cannot proceed.
Belief. Yeah. Trust, belief.
Trust is a tremendous word. In fact, trust is the most important word. In fact, trust is the only currency in the world of business. Never money, by the way. But I'll leave trust aside, because iske trust ke pehle bhi kuch aur chahiye, tab jaake trust aayega.
Integrity.
I'm going to keep that word out. I get into trouble whenever I talk about integrity. This is it. What the customer does not have.
Understanding about your offering.
Even before that, attention. See, I'm an 80s boy. I was in my teens in 80s. In the 80s, we had one television channel. Then we had two. Our television initially was black and white. Then we got a color TV. And I remember my father wanted to save money and bought a television without a remote control. It was a big thing. It was the only color TV in area in Calcutta where we lived. चित्रहार देखने के लिए लोग दूर दूर से आ जाते थे. Life used to be very different back then. Then we had a second channel, a regional channel, right? And then in the early 90s, I remember I was traveling to the States along with my family. It was a vacation. And there was a song by Bruce Springsteen called 57 Channels and Nothing On. I was final years of school, late 80s, early 90s. That song left a big impression. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. 57 channels and nothing on. Already, at least in America, India obviously changed very rapidly in the 90s after that. Already in America, people are thinking, oh my God, just because I have many channels do not really mean anything. It's too much. Because I can only watch one channel at a time. Back in the 80s, an average dude on the streets of India would be exposed to about 8 or 10 or 15 brands. Today, we are exposed to 4,000 or 5,000 brands a day. With so many startups everywhere, everybody saying, oh my God, I have got a kick-ass solution that's going to solve everything. This is the best invention since sliced bread. Your life's going to change because of me. A, we don't believe. Trust quotient comes later. And even before that, you just don't have my attention. I don't know how many of you watched IPL yesterday. If you did, and if you watched it on Hotstar or you watched on television, unlikely, if you were engrossed in the cricket, that you would remember the advertisements, unless it's an ad that they repeat it again and again, and that kind of stays in your mind. It's unlikely, if you're reading newspapers, very few people read newspapers nowadays, but if you read newspapers, you remember advertisements, unless it's an ad that caught your attention because you were consciously or subconsciously looking out for that product. Fact of the matter is, you just don't have your customers' attention now. It's one of the biggest things, and we don't realize this. How do we get attention? A lot of people come to me, I'm doing digital marketing, I'm doing some kind of promotions, I'm doing a Facebook marketing campaign, or I'm doing a content marketing strategy on Instagram, etc. And I'm just not getting any closure. I'm spending money, or people are seeing it, people are clicking it, they're even coming and falling at my landing page and they're not proceeding forward. You just don't have people's attention. And it's understandable because vendors out there don't have your attention as well. And why should others give you attention? And why is this happening? Why is this happening? Before that, you're talking to somebody who teaches in business school. I'll have to give you a framework. Most of you who have done your MBA would remember what this is. Who have not, there's a framework, and it's a good framework. These frameworks don't change. As of now, it's not changed in the world of a lot of technology as well. This is the purchase funnel. The ADA that we talk about is awareness, interest, desire, and action. This used to be what it was in 1950s and 60s, not changed. Only thing is that in the 60s, it used to happen perhaps slower. Today, it happens much quicker. In the 60s or 70s, it used to happen with maybe 5 products in the whole day. Today, it happens possibly 500 products in every, 15 minutes, because we are consuming content all the time. If you're using your phone and you're looking at it and using InShots, or you're looking at Facebook, you're reading stuff, you're reading blogs, there are ads everywhere. In fact, people writing to you are selling something to you non-stop. Almost all of them, even if they're relatives, they're selling something to you. They want your attention. Selling, I mean it metaphorically. They want your attention. How much attention can you spare and look at something new? Unless you are, truly upset with your service provider, you'll possibly not look out for that. Why would you care? You got too much to do. Yes, Karyana, you got your hand up.
Yes, with this theory or IDA, is it still relevant? Because right now is too much, too many informations for the target segments, right?
Okay.
They already so many
great question.
options.
Great question,
Yes.
and I would like to firmly state that it's not only still relevant, it's actually more relevant than before. It's just that it's happening quicker than you and I realize. The mind is very weird, Kaya. The mind deals with things much quicker than you and I realize. You know, I had a professor, but he was not really my professor, but I followed his works all my life. And I was in Cambridge in 2016 in September. This gentleman's name is Jim Flynn. He stays in New Zealand. I'm not sure if Jim's still alive or not. I hope he is. Jim is one of the biggest behavioral scientists, psychometrists in the planet. Jim Flynn's work, his last 2016's huge work, was that every generation is smarter than the earlier generation. And he proved it empirically. He did heuristic evaluations and proved it empirically. The phenomenal research. And Jim was there. I had my fanboy moment. And I realized that a lot more. My son is 18. My daughter is going to be 10. Of course, there's a huge generation difference between me and my son. I feel there's a generation difference between my son and my daughter. So generations earlier used to be father or mother, and then son and daughter, and then in the next generation. Now it's got fused. What technology has done for us, Karyana, is that things have happened faster. It's just quicker, right? Awareness, interest, desire, action, that entire funnel is still happening. It's just happening faster. It's like preparing for, I think another great way of looking at it, I don't know if you're interested in boxing or martial arts or cricket or dancing. Say in dance, you do mudras, right? In martial arts, you have movements. In boxing, you box. In cricket, you're possibly shadowing continuously, right? What you're doing is that you're doing them again and again and again and again, and you build muscle memory. Well, there's nothing called muscle memory. Muscles can't have memory. What you're trying to do is increase your response time, or rather decrease your response time. And you're doing it so quickly. What that means is information is just flowing through quicker. And because we are smarter than before, we can also process it better, which means it's harder for marketers. That means you will have to have something or a series of things which will connect with your customer, with your audience quicker, faster. And you possibly will have one instance of getting that attention. What has also happened, Karyana, is marketing has now become truly omni-channel, right? It's integrated. And there are concepts in the world of digital marketing called remarketing. Say, for example, if you are looking at your Instagram or Facebook, and there's an advertisement of a shoe, a pair of shoes, Skechers. You look at the shoes and you like the shoes, right? And then you go to NDTV to read news, and you start seeing a Skechers advertisement. What this is happening is this data is getting flown, right? What technology is doing, it's just taking that data and giving it to people. Now, that means I'll have to understand even before that, and hence this entire session of market segmentation and customer persona, is your ads need to go to people who care. If you are selling, let's say, for example, if I am selling leather belts, and I am a tremendous believer of vegan products, it's possibly not a good fit. What technology has now done through data has helped you identify who you're selling to, and hence the need for segmentation and persona. So ADA is not only more relevant, it's actually more dangerously relevant, because this is now available to everybody. So you have to more sharply define your customer, a lot sharper than before. I hope it becomes a little clear. Happy to continue with the conversation in a while. See, the problem is there's a big bhid out there. There's too much happening in front of you. And life is essentially complicated, and you have to make choices. I don't know, any of you have seen this before? We call it the empathy map. And at all of these stages, is what a marketer would sit down and think. And if you're an entrepreneur, you need to think like this. It's not about somebody buying, or mera saman bikne kyun nahi raha hai. If somebody comes and tells me that I have sold this, especially a founder comes and tells me, this is my revenue, I'll ask, what's your runway? What's your revenue runway? What's your revenue for the last year? So this, how many people you've sold to? How many people have come back and bought from you? Etc. Standard questions. Then comes the non-standard questions. Why do your customers buy from you? Well, because they like my product. I mean, what do you mean they like their product? What do you mean by that? What else do they buy when they're buying your product? Exactly in your segment, who else are they buying from? Bottom line, it boils down to how well you know your customer. See, we have a thought, we feel, and it can be interchangeable. We may or may not say something, and that's when we do. But the problem with a large part of customer acquisition plan, a promotion and a marketing plan, is exactly that fourth one. We're trying to get them to do without understanding how that process of that person's mind is working. Why that person should buy your product is not very clear. When I ask for people to do customer journey, and I don't know, Meher, whether I will get to meet this group over here another time. I believe I will, right? In a couple of weeks from now. What I would urge you to do is start thinking how your customers, why your customers would buy your product. And then I would want you to do a customer journey. The customer journey is not when the customer lands up in your website. The customer journey is even before that. I will ask you, who's your customer? How do you know this person should be your customer? How much do you know about the customer? The customer journey is much before the call to action, much before that. And उसके बाद तो बहुत problems start उसके बाद start होगा कि मैंने खरीद लिया उसके बाद क्या होगा? उससे भी पहले, खरीदने का पहले, this gentleman or this lady, what is this person thinking about? I'm going to go quickly. Empathy mapping takes me, and I'm going to get into some personas very quickly, and I'm going to give you guys some homework. You can hate me for that. Empathy mapping brings me to one of the most important things in building personas and segmentation, is understanding needs. And one of you, I believe Anupama, mentioned needs right at the beginning. And it stems again from a very age-old classical concept. I'm not saying whether this is the exact way it works or not. I'm not going to get into academic conversation. Bottom line is, we have needs, and needs follow in a certain manner. I'm inviting you guys to take a picture of this slide. I'm inviting you to take a picture of this slide. There is a connection between these two slides. This slide and this slide. Dono are borrowed from the internet. Happy to share the sources. If you can read them, they're there underneath the images. Now, when you're selling a product or a service, you're adhering to somebody's need. What need are you adhering to? The more, the better, of course. Roti, kapda, makan is a certain kind of business, right? This is biological and physiological part. The higher it gets, what's interesting, the higher it gets, of course, you know, if you have read C.K. Prahlad's Fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, the big guys sell products right at the bottom. This is harder to sell over there. And they sell in volume, sell tons, right? That's why Toyota is a more successful company than Lamborghini. Now, if you look at needs of people at various stages, so if I'm buying, for example, I'm 48 years old, I'm going to buy myself, I'm having midlife crisis. I have two choices. One is that I can have an extramarital affair, and the other is that I'm going to buy myself a bike. My wife would not want me to have either, but in many ways, many Harley-Davidson bike campaigns are targeted towards 40s. I mean, extramarital affair is the joke over there. And that person now has money to spare. That person now wishes for something in life. So if you look at how Harley-Davidson bikes are sold, or Triumph bikes are sold, or Kawasaki bikes are sold, they're sold to a certain group of 20s. And then the fat boy bikes of Harley-Davidson get sold to a certain group of people above 40s. And you should start thinking why people buy those bikes before you start looking at how those ad campaigns are planned and the marketing campaigns are done. You have to first think, what is the thought? What is the rationale behind putting a product in that segment? It's adhering to needs. And I'm inviting you guys to take a picture of this and take a picture of this and start looking at needs of your customer of the product that you're selling and what are you addressing to. Moving on very quickly. Daniel Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. I'm heavily influenced by that book. Some of you might have read that book. It's a pretty heavy read, but the book is fantastic. It again talks about biases and the way we think. We say that there are two ways we look at life. There is a system level 1 and a system level 2. One, we weigh our thought processes. We put in a lot of thought in what we are going to do and then decide. And the other is that we think instantaneously. Depending on your product, how you're pitching it and who you're pitching it to and how your messaging is going to be, it is largely going to cater to either of these two. Now, I don't know what you're selling. If Meher, for example, is selling experiential training, depending on who the customer is, it's going to be a system level 1 or a system level 2. I, for one, believe experiential learning is super crucial. It's far more important than any standard way of looking at learning. I will possibly thereby cater to a certain one way of thinking and a customer who is possibly a little more aware of experiential learning. And thereby, Meher's marketing campaign needs to completely change for somebody like me. Similarly, somebody who is more akin to more traditional ways of learning may look at it very differently. ऐसे जैसा बेकार की बात है, जरूरी नहीं है. उससे ज़्यादा important है बच्चे स्कूल जाए, पढ़े, homework करे, etc., etc. That's another school of thought. Now, both of us are potentially clients of Meher's business for our children, but both of us need to be looked at completely differently, and the marketing messaging cannot be the same. We are completely separate market segments. We are completely separate personas. Does this make sense? Moving ahead, some reflection, please. How do you think? How does your customer think? And what do you, I'm not asking you to sort of respond right now, but I want some of you, one or two of you, to share your experiences quickly, maybe in a 2-3 minute span. In terms of system level 1, system level 2, when you look at your customer, I'll give you an example. This is a new example that I have come across from my household. I live with my parents, they're in their 70s. Indian diet is such that we don't believe in exercise and diets, etc., properly, especially if you're middle class. And we, if you look at people in and around us, there's a large number of them. The health seems to deteriorate very rapidly at a certain age, right? 30s onwards, and then 40, and then 40s mein kharab hona chala to 50 and 60s, and then it falls vertically. A large part of that is because we don't consume sufficient protein. Now, many of us could be vegetarians. Some of us who are non-vegetarians at a certain age and beyond, you don't want to consume non-vegetarian. Now, all of a sudden, I see this very interesting product being sold in the market. People who would go to the gym, I play a lot of sports, I still play a lot of cricket. I need to stay fit. I play with people half my age and twice as good. I need to stay strong. So I consume a lot of protein, but I have never consumed, those big protein powders, etc. Because I was always scared. My wife's a doctor. She tells me this is not good for me, etc., etc. I don't want to mess with my wife. It's too dangerous. So I never bought protein powder. But I saw people around me buy protein powder a lot. Now, what's very interesting is my wife kept on saying, this is bad, don't have it. But the two of us had a lot of conversations. I have a lot of interest in diet and exercise, especially for senior citizens. I have business interests in that. Both of us spoke. And one day I see something called Horlicks Protein X in my house. In fact, it's become a rage. And it's got more or less the same stuff, perhaps a little less in intensity. I don't know the chemical compounds. As the same big kala wala dabba jisme protein powder gym wala use karta hai. And I see my wife giving that to my parents and to her parents. She sent it to Lucknow. And we all take it now. All of us. And I find that fascinating. the market segment changed. Protein powder, all of a sudden Horlicks came out with a protein powder. Because the concept and understanding of protein changed in the last few years. Gym jana band hua, ghar mein thoda kasrat kiya log. People have started becoming a little more mindful. Horlicks comes out with a new product. There's a lot of thinking behind these large companies. And I find it fascinating. There are examples like this all around you. And now, what's interesting in my cricket team, we have this one guy who's a really strong lad. He's become like a tree, he's massive. And he comes and tells me, Kaustav, you kept on telling us that protein powder is bad. I'm wondering whether I should switch from the big dabba that I used to take to Horlicks Protein X. I said, why? He says, Horlicks, it's good for you. See how brand positioning takes place. Right? It's good for you. It's may less side effects. I said, but it's got the same stuff. If you read, it's the same stuff. I mean, there must be changes. Nice. The narrative shifts. System level 1, system level 2. My wife went to see her parents in Lucknow. We ran out of Horlicks Protein X. My parents, who don't like taking all these things, system level 1 mein ghus chuka hai. Automatically it just went in. Protein X just comes now. And you will understand when you can move products from system level 2 to system level 1 in the minds of a customer, that's when you make a lot of money. People who buy Apple, they just buy Apple. And then they get into confirmation bias to justify in their minds why they need to buy Apple.
So, Kaustav, I have a question there. What about the ethics of it also, right? Like sometimes they know that system level 1 is what's going to get people to buy your product, but it is doing X, but it tries to package it with Z, right? Which means that, for example, in say experiential learning itself, though your learning is going to get your innate learning is going to get better. The way you look at learning, the learning outcomes are going to get better. But it can be marketed as saying that your test results will go higher. The product may not be directly improving test results, but it's marketed like that, no? And that example can be used elsewhere also. Right?
Yes, yes.
So sometimes, one thing is to move people from system 1 to 2. The other is to tell people that it's solving something that they want to hear.
Meher, the integrity and the ethics is a whole new beast, right? And I don't have a good answer for you. And that's a problem that we have. And I think it's not just sufficient to be good entrepreneurs. I think it's far more important to decide what kind of an entrepreneur we wish to be. One of the most important philosophers of our time, his name is Ben Parker. Anybody knows who's Ben Parker? No. Ben Parker is Peter Parker's uncle. Anybody knows who's Peter Parker?
Yeah, Spider-Man, of course.
Yes, of course. Peter Parker, Spider-Man's uncle, said something very important to Spider-Man. With great powers come great responsibilities. So if you think about it, all of us at some stage or the other have worked for some entrepreneur or the other. Entrepreneurs are huge risk takers. They're extremely unreasonable people. They work very hard. They lead a very, very difficult life, and a large number fail. Despite that, because they're obstinate, they have conviction bordering stupidity, they carry on. They proceed. They also suffer from confirmation bias. They want to do, they know what they're doing is correct, and they go on like this. They have tremendous parallel vision. At the same time, they are absolutely, like horses. And they want to run. And a substantial part of business is about creating excess. So you want to sell, and you want to sell. But a big part of what I think is a really successful business would actually think on behalf of the customer a lot more than we usually do. If you want to build sustainable wealth over a period of time, it's not about kaise bhi wo bech ke nikal jana. It's about building value over a period of time. And truly successful businesses build value over a long period of time. But we are all in a hurry, aren't we, Meher? And we have to be, because we'll get replaced otherwise. But we'll have to do the ethics conversation another time. But it's a very, very important conversation. And I do invite the foundation to think about this, because I believe the ethics conversation is crucial for sustainability, including surviving of entrepreneurs.
No, so the message that you're trying to give to the startups is that try to move people from system 2 to system 1. Is it not, when they're within the business model?
I'm saying life is about balances. I'm saying yes, if you can move them from 2 to 1, it's possibly going to be better for you. But at the same time, you need to think what is better for the clients more than what is better for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you can look after the client will look after you. Because I did say customer is the business. Now, you look after the client will look after you. And I'm sure many of you will have stories from your life that one business fell down, you started something else, and the customers were there for you. Well, if they were not, well, you possibly did something wrong. The customer feels that you're going to look after them. You're going to be able to take the customer in your journey. Yes, Karyana, please.
Yes, as you mentioned about Daniel Kahneman, the system 1, system 2, he talks about the behavior economics, right? And I think relate to your idea. Right now, people are looking from the point of view of neuroscience. I think the marketing are looking now is how to hack the attention of the customers.
Yep.
Hacking. So the problem is because there is so many, we already go through the experience, right? So based on that, then because if the information just directly, but just telling or just information, I don't believe that it will work. But if go through the hacking on what we are usually do, I think it's more effective. And we can see right now there is so many marketing gimmicks are using the endorsers through the social media, TikTok and everything. Because
so what you call hacking, I don't know, and we will have to move on. But then what you call hacking is perhaps the way I look at it is specific strategies and tactics. But what you use something called neuroscience.
Yes.
This was always about neuroscience, Karyana. Even when the world was simple and there was no internet, it was always about neuroscience. At the end of the day, everything happens right over here. That's why I wrote it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. It's always over there. But the only thing is that there is more coming at you. So you're saying we will need to hack it in such a manner that it will go in a more dependable manner and you can get the result that you seek out of it. I am saying it still follows the same framework. Because if there is no awareness, if there is no interest, it's just happening quicker. That's all that I'm saying. You also mentioned social media and influencers. It's exactly the same thing. Now, the point is, for example, if Meher's looking for cosmetics, this is as an example, because it's a huge cosmetic story all of a sudden. Who would have thought a cosmetic company will become a fortune, whatever, I don't know, in the Nykaa story? This is unbelievable, right? Who would have thought? But yet, we all knew that people use cosmetics. Women use cosmetics more than men, and men also use cosmetics. It's a growing market. Why is it that others did not look at it? Now, those are one side of the story. The other side of the story is, if Meher is looking for cosmetics, let's assume for a second she is using more social commerce than e-commerce. She's going to Instagram, right? Now, she's a busy person. She works in this foundation. She's supporting startups all the time. In her spare time, most likely she's traveling from A to B in her car. She's sitting, possibly somebody else is driving, and she's flicking, right? Life's just this. She's just flicking. She's just flicking. This is all that she's doing. And she's thinking about many things. She's thinking about family, she's thinking about work, she's thinking about a vacation that she should have taken a long time back, etc., etc., etc. She's thinking about calling her, loved ones that she's not spoken to 3-4 months, and then she'll stop. To you, that could be hacking. That to me is that just understanding Meher, who the customer is, and choosing the right kind of an influencer. If I am the one who's selling foundation to Meher, she's possibly not going to stop unless there is attention. I distort the message in such a manner that Meher finds it funny or something else. Or Meher will possibly stop because Deepika Padukone will do it. Or Meher may stop because somebody else that Meher looks up to will do it. Which is exactly the same as the AIDA thing. Because Meher is tough to go through that attention span. So it's actually the same framework. But I'm going to move on. Keep those questions coming. Meher, we are doing very poorly for time. I'm so sorry. It's still 2 o'clock, right?
Yeah, we have 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. Since I have a session with these people, I may roll over some of these things into the next session. Okay. Now, this is crucial for me to build segmentation, persona, and then market segments. For me, it's crucial that we understand the mind. One of the most important things about understanding the mind is autonomy and freedom of choice are critical to our well-being, and choice is critical to freedom and autonomy. I know it's a bit of a tongue twister. I want you to read that slowly. Autonomy and freedom of choice are critical to our well-being, and choice is critical to freedom and autonomy. Barry Schwartz, I invite you to read his work as well. He's another behavioral economist. He's written his huge work. And if you get bored with academic pieces, just do a Wikipedia search on him. His big work is called Paradox of Choices. Just read the Wikipedia page. That's fabulous. I suspect many of you are businesses which have, I'm sure all of you would have an internet presence. Some of you may have products and services and pricing. If you look at businesses, they have 2 or 3 or 4 choices. Right? Mature businesses have more defined choices than specific choices. Immature businesses, I'm making blanket statements. Don't hold this against me because there's no empirical evidence. But immature businesses who have not understood customers will have crazy numbers of choices because they're trying to sell to as many people as possible, right? Because they have to survive. But the huge problem is when you're trying to sell to everybody, you're most likely selling to nobody. I'm making a statement again. When you're trying to sell to everybody, you're most likely selling to nobody. Large businesses have sliced and diced the market. That's why market segmentation. They know who they're selling to. They may let go of some people. They may let go of a customer base. And they say that I'm selling to these guys. And my market segmentation is done. I know exactly who I wish to sell to. It is more or less fixed for me. And my messaging is absolutely clear. Look at your business and think, have you really identified your customer segment and your messaging is coherent or not? See, the problem, oh my God, you want to give people choices, and there's this paradox, and this is the paradox of choices. It's a basic need. I want to choose. I want to be in power. I want to decide for myself. It's a basic human need. I want to decide for myself. So you come to me and you pitch to me and you say, this is my product. This is my service. This is what I'm going to do. This I believe is your problem. This is what I'm going to do. Some of the attention AIDA ka A ho chuka hai. Awareness and interest ho chuka hai. Ghus chuke ho. Decision pe leke aana hai usko. I'm getting into that stage and I'm saying the customer wishes to decide. Customer does not like a bechu, right? Customer does not like the sales guy who comes and pushes the product down the customer's throat. Customer will push that person away unless the customer is somebody or the product is something that the customer desperately needs. Like a COVID vaccine. Very soon we will have 6 different vaccines to choose from and they will start competing with each other. You realize that. But a year back, we were hungry for the vaccine. It doesn't matter where it was coming from. So we want choices because we as a customer want to feel that we are in power. And I'm telling you this, I believe a large number of marketeers do not realize this, and that's why they're bad marketeers. And a disproportionately large number of founders don't realize this. They feel they're in charge. They're going to succeed if they can make the customer feel that the customer is in charge. And I want you to please reflect on this. The customer needs to feel the customer is in charge. The customer needs to have autonomy to choose. But the problem with autonomy to choose is that people do not like to take responsibility of choice. So also restrict the choice. So I don't know what your businesses are. And if you have different versions, different services, how many do you have is a question that I see. I will ask a startup, kitne hain? Kitne variants hain? Go as small as possible, give a choice, let the customer decide, but as few as possible. उससे अगर आपका कुछ customer छूट जाता है, छूट जाने दीजिए. Remember, it's the replicability which is what makes the business. You need to do this again and again to figure out what your model is. Is Karana. Yeah, buddy, go ahead. Karyana?
Yeah. And this statement crossed my mind. That's about the marketing. One of the marketing strategy that if you cannot convince your customers, then you confuse them.
No, I don't think that works. I think you need to respect your customers. If you want to build a sustainable business over a period of time, you know, to respect the customer. Respect is a very crucial word. Human beings are suckers for this word, right? We want it. We yearn. This drives us. If you cannot have respect in a relationship, that's going to break at some point in time. And a relationship between a brand and a customer is no different from any other relationship. It's true for our personal lives. It's true for our professional lives. And a brand and a customer's relationship is actually deeply intimate. This is even more true there. I would not want to confuse my customer. In fact, I know what you're saying. I know this is a very populist saying. So I know I've heard this before. And what I would invite over there is actually, in fact, one of the fundamental things about business, according to me, is business needs to be truly simple. The simpler it is, the easier it is for people, everybody involved, for it to work on it. It needs to be simple. Maybe the mix of the product may not be simple, but the communication, the messaging, the purpose, the drive to engage with somebody, all of that needs to be simple. I invite you, I keep talking about Apple and Amazon because these are great companies. These are companies we've seen grow in the last 15, 20 years. It's remarkable how they've grown. 10 saal pehle, I was in an Apple store in London. 10, 12 years back, I'm saying, abhi to common ho gaya hai. They're the first guys I saw who had a massive, like typical Apple stores, and there were no point of sales, no cashiers. They did away with that. They're non-stop thinking, how can I make it simpler? At what stages my customer gets inconvenienced? Super simple. One of the things that Amazon's success point is simple. In fact, the one-click button is the biggest example of Amazon's innovativeness. It's super simple. I'm not going to go through 3 layers to buy something.
The sound is mute.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Kaustav.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it as simple as possible. That's most important. We're going to rush. Karyana, I'm going to come back to you in a few minutes. Okay. I'm going to show you a few personas. I'm inviting you to take pictures of this, please. These are all borrowed from the internet. You can just go Google image in persona, you'll get tons of them. What's important is to figure out how to do them. This is one. This is another. Now, what's important is to figure out how to do this. So the most important thing is to do a research, your own research for your own customer. When we build segmentations and personas, the word that comes to our mind first and foremost is a demographic study, which is easy, which is the easier part of things. The 9 out of 10 things that's demographics. Super important. It's not that it's not important, but it's just not sufficient. You'll have your age, race, religion, family, ethnicity, income, education level, occupation, gender. It's a demographic segmentation. You break the pie into big chunks, but it's very difficult to do your business through this only. Smart businesses will take it a step ahead and do psychographic segmentation. In the psychographic segmentation, you're going to start thinking about the person's lifestyle, opinions of that person, interests, activities, social status. One of my professors, again from Cambridge, his name is John Rust, is the guy who worked on what eventually notoriously became Cambridge Analytica. We worked with tons of Facebook data to understand how a person thinks. Of course, that got used in a whole bunch of other areas. The dark side of data, let's just call it like that. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of information that is out there if you're willing to listen. Just think of everything that I've told you so far. I've lived a substantial part of my life abroad, middle-class Bengali. My wife's a doctor. I have 2 children. My son is 18. My daughter is 9.5. I feel there is a generation gap between my son and my daughter. I teach. I've given you so much information already. How well do you know your customer? If you're selling something to me, if you know what makes me tick, your campaigns will change. And in this age of internet-enabled age that we live in, and it's going to get, very soon, if you're a movie buff like I am, if you've taken the blue pill or red pill of Matrix, if you look at life like that, it's very difficult to figure out when we are digital and when we are not. It's perpetual now almost, isn't it? And it's going to get worse and worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. So it's important that you don't just size me and define me as male, Indian ethnicity, religion may or may not be, socioeconomic strata, and you put me in a bracket. It's not important because you hardly know me like that. You know me far better with psychographic segmentation. And you can take it a step ahead and get into ethnography. I find it fascinating, this world of ethnography. Absolutely, those of you who are not versed with this, I invite you to go and do a little bit of research, study, think about it. You might have heard of something called mystery shopping, very popular. Like I asked them, are your customers happy? He says, yeah. I said, how do you know? Or they have come back to me, and they've come back to you, maybe they didn't find a better alternative. How do you know? So ethnographic studies would basically, you would put yourself in a native environment from a customer's point of view. Very difficult to do. Focus group research and studies would do more of this. But this is like immersing yourself into the way the customer, understanding truly the customer's problems. If you want to sell something, if you're a B2B business, I actually tell people that go and spend time with the customer in their environment. सुन के आप उसका प्रॉब्लम नहीं समझ पाओगे, महसूस करना जरूरी है, if that makes sense. Meher, with your permission, I'm going to go over the limit by about 2-3 minutes. I'm going to stop soon.
Sure.
So now, since we've fashionably gone beyond time, I'm inviting you guys to again take pictures of these slides, because I think they're self-explanatory. There's a lot of writing over here. I don't want to read them anyways.
You can also share this deck, right? And
Happy to do that. Absolutely. I will do that. I want you guys to build personas for your customer, of your customers. And I want you to go as deep as possible. If possible, get into ethnographic studies before I come back to you guys. If not, at least visualize what they may be going through and do a thorough demographic and psychographic study. I want you to think how I will customize this data. So if you look at this, I'm trying to figure out, this is something that I borrowed from the internet. I'm figuring out this guy who is 46 years old. I'm deciding the name. Now I'm saying who this person is. I'm imagining who this person is. Well, why are you imagining? If you're already in the business, you should actually go and find out. Who are you selling to? Trust me, successful brands do this day in, day out, non-stop. Mechanically, they will go on doing this. And they will sharpen this and sharpen this and sharpen this. I do campaigns for big businesses and small businesses. With the big businesses, pay me more money. Small businesses are more fun to do, but they have no money. And one of the reasons they have no money is because they don't sell enough. And they don't sell enough because they don't do this research enough. And a lot of people come and tell me, I don't have money to do the research. I say, boss, tough luck. And then you decide based on all of this data, how my persona will look, and I will now show you some good personas. I'll share all of this with you. Now, this is getting to be a better persona. I'll share this with you. Very cool persona. Motivations. Now, yes, I mean it. Even if you're selling shoes, it's important to understand who you're selling to. Look at the depth in a persona like this. If you can do your customer's persona in details, you will be able to figure out what your messaging is going to be like. Its impact runs all the way up to customer service, as in post-sale. Check this out. Okay. I'm going to stop now. So all of you do that. Sorry, my vain attempt at a lame joke. Sorry about that. This is actually matching horoscopes, right? This is what it is. It's you and your customer. I'm going to stop with two advertisements. There's a reason why the Marlboro Man, I'm giving you a different perspective. This is a very famous, iconic advertisement. There's a reason why this happened. And I'm going to share some of this maybe known to you. Of course, the time it came out 60, 70 years back, the time it came out, this Marlboro Man ad was targeting men. But this ad, was it a freak? Was it unplanned? Or was it very well planned? Post this advertisement, Meher, you'll find this interesting. The number of women smoking cigarettes went up in America. Does that make sense to anybody? And why it would be? Can somebody tell me the persona? There are two personas over here, men and women smoking cigarettes. Two. Just give me two, just quick thoughts. Okay, we don't have time. Okay, Neera, yes, go ahead, please.
So now this cigarette comes with filters, and as I think the time when the cigarette was launched, so men did not consider smoking cigarettes with filters very cool and macho, because they considered,
Correct.
it was reflected of a weaker sex.
Sure.
So these cigarettes were actually launched for women. And then they realized that, maybe there's a category of these metrosexual men who would also not mind, who are health conscious, and would also, be interested in this. So probably.
Sure. Excellent answer, Neera. I think the concept of metrosexual man came much later, but then it possibly the start of it. I've never thought of it like that. I think you could be right. But a lot of women looked at this guy over here, this ultimate specimen of godliness or whatever it is, the jawline and the cowboy, and then says man should be like that. And once that was established, men wanted to be like that, right? And that guy smokes cigarettes, and I should be smoking cigarettes. But while doing that, the messaging was going. It's very interesting if you look at this, that it actually catered to two markets at the same time with two very different personas. But the messaging, it's about the characteristics may be different, but the messaging, although you see, I'll give you an example. Shah Rukh Khan in the 90s is a very absolute heartthrob for every, almost every woman or whatever in the planet. My wife thought that he is God's gift to humankind. I used to get tremendously annoyed, which my wife would argue is because I was jealous of Shah Rukh Khan, which is kind of preposterous thought. I always used to think he used to ham and he used to overact, etc., etc., etc. The same person looked very different to two of us. My wife and I grew up together. We were in school together. We know each other for more than 30 years, married for more than 20 years. We have very similar likes and dislikes. But that one man completely divided us in the way we looked at him. So person can tell different stories. This person told different stories to different customer persona. You alter behavior, a completely altered behavior with the De Beers Act. There's absolutely no reason for a piece of rock to be so expensive. Then not only they did that, people used to save money all of a sudden, all over the world, that mera pyar ka strength kya hai is going to be driven by the size of that rock that I'm going to put on the finger. And this final one is my favorite. They realized the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, right? If womankind is a pyramid, and I don't know, whatever is the specimen of the top species amongst womankind, which is what every advertisement looks like. But my bulk of my buyer is not like that. My bulk of my buyer is an average everyday woman. And Dove comes and says, you're all beautiful. And they defined the need of that person. I don't need you to do something to become somebody else. I just need you to do whatever you will do because you're already beautiful. And I want you to reflect on the Dove ad. I'm going to stop now. I'm sorry, I'm way over time.
Thanks, Kaustav, for the session, and thanks everyone who's given us feedback. It will definitely help us improve. So I know, so Kaustav, did you have more aspects on the segmentation? I think we covered a lot on the personas.
Yeah.
And maybe next session, are you planning to cover on the segmentations a little deeper?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So
I will cover more on the segmentation in the next session, but I think it's correlated. You cannot look at them in silos. I think one of the biggest problems is that these things are almost always looked at in silos. You cannot segment unless you have built the persona, and there is no point building persona unless you have thought about the segments. So I think it's important that what will be great, Meher, is in the next session when we look at strategies, because the strategy will come from the segment and the persona building. If some of our colleagues over here can run this in their businesses and the systems, maybe you can send a few of them and we can discuss 2 or 3 of them in the class.
Sure, if you can send any template you have for persona.
No, I don't have a template. I don't have a template. What I would invite people to do is, I'll share the slides with you. What I'll invite them to